The searing pain hit me like a bolt of lightning, radiating from my core through every nerve ending in my body. I cried out, gripping the bed rails until my knuckles turned white. The contractions were coming faster now, intense waves slamming into me. "You're doing great. Just keep breathing," the nurse encouraged. I tried to focus on her calming voice, using it as an anchor against the agony. After what felt like an eternity, I heard the sharp cries of a newborn pierce the air. "It's a girl," the doctor proclaimed. Relief and joy flooded through me as they placed my precious baby girl into my arms. Her tiny fingers grasped at mine as I held her close. In that moment, all the pain dissolved away. I looked up to see Nolan, my husband of 5 years, staring down at us. But instead of the loving gaze I expected, his face was etched with tension. His eyes flickered with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "She's perfect," I whispered, tears of happiness trailing down my cheeks. Nolan gave a curt nod. "Get some rest. I need to make a call," he said abruptly before slipping out of the room. A gnawing feeling began to take hold in my gut. Something wasn't right. Ever since I had gotten pregnant, Nolan had grown increasingly distant and cold. It was a stark contrast to the man I fell in love with, who had once been my biggest supporter. I tried to push away the dark thoughts creeping in. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Nolan returned half an hour later, his jaw clenched. I searched his face, looking for any trace of joy or excitement, but found none. "Who was on the phone?" I asked. He avoided my gaze. "No one. Look, we need to talk." I noticed he was still wearing his wedding ring, the plain gold band I had placed on his finger 5 years ago, the one he promised he would never take off. But now it seemed like a lie. "What's going on?" I demanded, my voice shaking. Nolan stood rigidly at the foot of the bed, his eyes cold. "This isn't working. I've tried, but I can't do this anymore." His words dropped like stones in the pit of my stomach. "Do what exactly?" "This." He made a gesture with his hand. "I'm in love with someone else." The room started spinning. This had to be a nightmare. "What are you saying?" I whispered. He shoved his hands in his pockets. "Her name is Cassidy. We've been seeing each other for months. I'm going to be with her." Suddenly, the past year replayed in my mind on fast forward. Nolan's unexplained absences, his emotional distance, it all clicked into place. Rage boiled up inside me. "You cheated on me while I was pregnant with your child." He stood there, stone-faced. "Cassidy was there for me in ways you weren't." The audacity of his words stole the breath from my lungs. I glared at him with every ounce of loathing I could muster. "Get out," I seethed. "Get out before I call security to drag you out of here." For a moment, Nolan just stared at me. Then, without another word, he turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him with dreadful finality. I looked down at my innocent baby, still cradled protectively in my arms. Nolan had turned his back on us, but I would never abandon my child. A steely resolve rose up within me, cutting through the shock and anguish. If Nolan wanted a war, he would get one. I would make him regret the day he ever betrayed us. The next few days passed in a haze of feedings, diaper changes, and sporadic bursts of sleep. My thoughts constantly drifted back to Nolan's cruel revelation in the hospital room. I replayed the scene over and over, analyzing every detail. The cold detachment in his eyes, the matter-of-fact tone as he declared his love for another woman. My best friend Juliana came to visit often, helping around the house and providing a sympathetic ear. I found myself obsessively recounting Nolan's betrayal to her, as if speaking the words aloud might miraculously change them. "That bastard! I never trusted him," Juliana declared, her eyes flashing. "Don't waste another second worrying about that snake." I sighed, adjusting the swaddled newborn in my arms. "I just don't understand how he could do this. We were so happy once." Juliana shook her head. "People show their true colors eventually. He never deserved you." I thought back to the early days with Nolan, how he used to surprise me with flowers, how we would stay up all night talking. When had it all gone wrong? "I ignored so many red flags," I said quietly. "The late nights at the office, the locked phone screen. I feel so stupid." "This is not your fault." Juliana squeezed my shoulder. "Nolan chose to betray his vows. Don't let him make you feel guilty, too." Over the next few weeks, I tried to focus on healing both physically and emotionally. But lingering doubts continued to plague me. I needed proof of Nolan's affair, some tangible confirmation that this Cassidy person truly existed. One evening, Juliana arrived on my doorstep, eyes blazing with fury. That asshole thought he could keep his little secret contained at the office. Well, it's all out in the open now. She revealed that she had discreetly investigated at the company where Nolan and I both worked. Rumors of his affair with a younger colleague named Cassidy had spread like wildfire. "It's definitely the same woman he mentioned," I said bitterly. "He wasn't even trying to hide it from people at work." Juliana nodded. "I'm so sorry, Alara, but at least now you know the truth. He doesn't deserve your tears." Hot anger pulsed through me as reality sank in. Nolan had paraded his mistress around, utterly unconcerned about my pain or public humiliation. I pictured his smug face and felt pure loathing wash over me. He had slipped the knife in my back when I was at my most vulnerable. Well, it was time I returned the favor. A week later, I was finally discharged from the hospital with strict instructions to rest and recover. As I settled into my bedroom, a sense of peace washed over me. For the first time since that wretched day, Nolan destroyed our lives. I had just finished nursing the baby when the doorbell rang. Still sore and fatigued, I slowly made my way downstairs. I froze when I opened the front door. Nolan stood on the porch next to a slender blonde woman I could only assume was Cassidy. Before I could react, they brushed past me into the foyer. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded, blocking their path. Nolan glanced around impatiently. "I'm here for my things. Cassidy will help me pack up." I gaped at them. Did they think they could just barge in and take over? Cassidy gave me a disparaging look. "We're here to take the baby, too. She deserves a proper home." Rage surged within me. "You must be out of your damn minds if you think I'm letting her go anywhere with you," I spat. Nolan stepped forward menacingly. "I will be a part of my daughter's life, like it or not." "Over my dead body," I snarled. "Get out before I call the cops." Just then I heard the front door swing open again behind me. "I wouldn't unpack just yet if I were you," came Juliana's voice. I turned to see her waving a manila envelope, eyes flashing. Nolan paled at the sight of her. "In fact, I think you'll both be cleaning out your desks at the office instead," she continued. Cassidy let out a scoff. "And who the hell are you?" "Who I am doesn't matter. What matters is that I have enough evidence here of your sordid affair to bury you both." Juliana pulled out printed emails and photographed text conversations documenting their relationship, all time-stamped during my pregnancy. Nolan lunged for the papers, but Juliana yanked them away. "Ah, too late. Copies have already been sent to the head office. Hope you don't mind facing a sexual harassment investigation, Cassidy." Cassidy gasped, glanced frantically at Nolan, then fled for the still-open door. After a final venomous glare, Nolan followed close behind. I turned to Juliana, awestruck. "How did you get all that?" she winked. "I have my sources. No one messes with my best friend." Relief swept over me. Once again, Juliana had proven herself a loyal ally. While Nolan and his mistress reaped the bitter harvest of their lies, I would keep forging ahead. Upstairs, my innocent baby slept soundly, unaware of the darkness that had invaded our lives. Gazing at her sweet face, I knew I would move mountains to make sure she never suffered like I had. Nolan had slipped the knife in my back when I was vulnerable. Now it was my turn to take everything from him. His dignity, his career, his reputation. The only thought sweeter than revenge was the chance to start over, far from his shadow. The next morning, I received an urgent call from Juliana, instructing me to get to the office immediately. Still weak and sore, I reluctantly left my newborn with a neighbor and drove downtown. Juliana met me outside the towering glass building that housed our company's headquarters. "I hope you're ready for a show," she said with a sly grin. Up in the executive wing, we stepped into a posh waiting area outside the president's office. Cassidy was already there, pacing and biting her nails. When she saw me, her eyes flashed with hatred. At that moment, the office door swung open and Nolan stalked out, face pale. He froze when he saw us, fear creeping into his expression. Mr. Harlan, the company president, emerged behind Nolan and beckoned us all inside. "Please, have a seat," Harlan said politely as we filed in. He was known as much for his courtesy as his shrewd intelligence. Cassidy sat ramrod straight, eyes fixed on the floor. Nolan drummed his fingers anxiously on the armrest beside her. Harlan neatly arranged papers on his desk before folding his hands. It seems we have some personnel issues that require immediate attention. He turned to Cassidy first. You are aware that intimate relationships between employees are against company policy? Yes, sir, she answered tersely. And yet clear evidence shows you had an ongoing affair with a married executive, a man whose wife, I might add, you worked closely with during her difficult pregnancy. Cassidy flushed but said nothing. Harlan continued in measured tones. Your actions show a disturbing lack of integrity and professionalism. Effective today, your employment is terminated. Cassidy shot to her feet. You can't do this. My family donated half the artwork in this building. Harlan didn't blink. Your aunt may be a noted philanthropist, but neither she nor your family name will excuse misconduct here. Defeated, Cassidy grabbed her purse and fled the office. Nolan reached out as if to stop her, then seemed to think better of it. Harlan turned his attention next to Nolan. Not only did you violate company rules, you abandoned your family duties. Such poor character does not befit a senior executive. Nolan's face twisted. I've given 15 years to this firm. You can't throw me out over one mistake. It was no mere mistake. You systematically deceived your wife and jeopardized an important project, distracting your team for months. Your presence here is now untenable. Harlan slid an envelope across the desk. Here is the terms of your severance package. I suggest you accept and make a quiet departure. With shaking hands, Nolan took the papers and left. I watched him go with a sense of dark satisfaction. Harlan gave me a kind look. My dear, you were clearly the injured party here. Consider this matter closed on the company's end. I hope you recover fully, both physically and personally. Outside the office, Juliana hugged me tight. I let out a sob I didn't know I'd been holding in, the overwhelming emotions of the past weeks finally crashing over me. It was over. Justice had been swift and sure. Now I could focus on rebuilding a new life with my daughter, a peaceful life, far from the backstabbing duplicity of people like Nolan. When karma came for him, the knife in his back was one he richly deserved. In the weeks following Nolan's termination, I focused on regaining my strength and finding a new normal with my daughter. I took extended medical leave from work, relying on my savings while I figured out next steps. Juliana was a constant support, helping around the house and encouraging me to take it one day at a time. Forget about Nolan. Everything will work out, you'll see, she said during one late-night chat session. But I couldn't forget. Or forgive. Quiet rage still simmered within me over how Nolan deceived me. I replayed every memory, analyzing all the times he lied straight to my face. He had hurt me deeper than anyone ever had, and he deserved to fully reap what he sowed. Late one night, an idea began to take form. If Nolan thought he could simply walk away unscathed, he was dead wrong. With Juliana's help, I would make sure his betrayal followed him like a dark cloud over every aspect of his life. I decided to start with his beloved career reputation. Nolan had always taken pride in being a rising star at the company, ruthless and ambitious. It was time to crash his image and turn his coworkers against him. Juliana and I drafted an anonymous email detailing Nolan's affair with a direct report during my vulnerable pregnancy. We included key dates and events, along with Cassidy's name. From an internet cafe, we sent the message to everyone in their business circle. Soon after, the heated office gossip mill went into overdrive. Nolan's peers and colleagues were appalled at the sordid details. The portrait of a lying snake emerged, destroying any respect he once commanded. Meanwhile, I spoke with a take-no-prisoners divorce lawyer about destroying Nolan financially. We drew up divorce papers asserting adultery as grounds and seeking full custody with a generous side of child support. Serving Nolan the papers at his new apartment was profoundly satisfying. The look of defeat on his face was priceless. "You'll regret this," he snarled, but we both knew all the power rested firmly in my hands now. Getting my revenge on the home-wrecking Cassidy required a subtler approach. I unearthed her active social media accounts and anonymously sent screenshots to her college friends of her boasting about seducing a married man. The backlash was swift and severe. Calls for her to be fired from her new waitressing job flooded her online profiles. Old friends and roommates publicly denounced her character. She disappeared from social media entirely less than 24 hours later. While Cassidy retreated into obscurity, Nolan would soon endure the full public humiliation of a court battle dragging his name through the mud. I hoped the legal fees and child support bled him dry. As I rocked my baby to sleep each night, the dark thoughts receded and calm took its place. The storm Nolan brought into our lives had cleared. Soon we would be free of him for good. The memories of the loving man I once knew replaced by the far more accurate image of a spineless, cruel traitor. He was finally getting exactly what he deserved. The day of my first divorce hearing arrived gray and bleak, fittingly mirroring my mood. I dressed in sober black and steeled myself for the confrontation ahead. I strode into the courtroom with my head held high, refusing to show an ounce of weakness. Nolan sat at the defendant's table, looking pale and twitchy. His usual well-groomed appearance was notably absent. As we went through initial motions, Nolan tried repeatedly to catch my eye. I kept my gaze fixed straight ahead, acting as if he weren't even in the room. When the judge questioned Nolan about the affair accusations, he sputtered unconvincingly. It meant nothing, just a stupid mistake. My lawyer presented ironclad evidence of the timeline of his betrayal coinciding with my vulnerable pregnancy. Nolan had no counter-argument. On the custody issues, Nolan became agitated and confrontational. "You can't prove I wouldn't be a fit parent," he burst out. The judge's tone grew stern. "You have not participated in caring for your newborn child. These allegations against your character are troubling." In the end, the judge approved our proposed arrangements for full custody and a substantial monthly child support payment. Nolan had lost completely on all fronts. The burning fury in his eyes spoke volumes. As we left court, Nolan grabbed my arm and forced me to face him. "I won't let you take my daughter away from me," he hissed. I yanked my arm back. "Touch me again and I'll have my lawyer file for a restraining order." Leaving him fuming, I walked away feeling victorious. The law was firmly on my side. Over the next few weeks, Nolan maintained a campaign to salvage his reputation without success. He tried shifting blame, claiming I pushed him away during pregnancy and refused marital affection. But the facts of his prolonged deceit were indisputable. Former colleagues and business contacts continued to ice him out, disgusted by the very public details of his affairs and misconduct. Doors closed swiftly when he came calling for job prospects. Nolan grew increasingly unhinged, ranting on social media about injustice and karma coming for those who wronged him. But his credibility was shot. Few paid him any mind. Meanwhile, I embraced single motherhood with a new optimism. The final divorce decree arrived right before my daughter's first birthday, with all terms in my favor. The new year felt full of promise and possibility. On a whim, I reached out to my former workplace and discovered they had an opening, eager to have me return. The chance to fully rebuild my career after years on the mommy track felt like a hard-won victory. As I regained my financial independence and stability, I marveled at how far I'd come. Just a year ago, my world had come crashing down. Now the future looked bright through eyes unclouded by lies and betrayal. Nolan had gotten the bitter revenge he deserved, and I had reclaimed my life. Over the next year, I fell into a rhythm of balancing work and motherhood. My new role involved less travel, allowing me to better care for my daughter's needs. Having the flexibility to leave early for school pickups and doctor visits made all the difference. Settling into my own place also brought immense relief. The wounds of Nolan's betrayal no longer haunted every corner. This was a home filled with new memories and possibilities. My social life also revived as I reconnected with old friends. Juliana remained a stalwart support, helping wrangle my rambunctious toddler during girls' nights out. Her companionship brought much-needed fun and laughter into my days. Meanwhile, Nolan's circumstances continued to crumble. With his reputation in tatters, he could only find spotty contract work. He burned through his remaining savings trying to keep up appearances and pay owed debts. I heard through the grapevine that he was hitting the bottle pretty hard too, often drunk and belligerent in public. It seemed anyone still willing to associate with him was another cheating lowlife or enabler. On the rare occasions our paths crossed, Nolan's bloodshot eyes and disheveled appearance only emphasized how far he'd fallen. He was a shell of the polished, ruthless corporate climber I'd once known. "We could have had it all," he slurred to me on one awkward chance encounter outside my office building. "It wasn't meant to turn out like this." I sidestepped him with a shrug. Should have thought of that sooner. I had long since stopped caring about anything he had to say. After 2 years of sporadic calls and texts full of bitter recriminations, Nolan's contact gradually faded to nothing. The biggest surprise was realizing I didn't miss him in the slightest. I was finally free, fully healed from wounds that had once cut so deep. My daughter remained oblivious to her father's dysfunctional spiral into obscurity. To her, family meant me, Grandma, and Aunt Juliana. She was thriving in preschool and had playdates most weekends with classmates. I made sure her life was filled with love and joy. As for Cassidy, the homewrecker who helped implode my marriage, karma had left its mark on her, too. Crippled by the scandal and social media backlash, she had changed her name and left the state. Wherever she ended up, I hope guilt haunts her over what she helped destroy. Maybe Nolan can give her late-night calls instead. On the eve of my daughter's 4th birthday, I hosted a princess tea party with 10 giggling little girls crowding my living room. As I snapped photos and filled teacups, my heart swelled with love and pride. The painful past felt like a distant lifetime ago. Now my days were rich with playfulness and possibility, chasing around a bright-eyed daughter who was the center of my world. I had traveled through the darkness and come out wiser, stronger, renewed in body and spirit. The future awaited, more radiant than ever. Time marched steadily onward, each new day further distance between my present happiness and the pain of the past. My daughter thrived in elementary school, smart and social. She excelled in reading and loved showing off new dance moves she learned in hip-hop class. Her eyes, so like her father's, now sparkled with joy he had long forfeited the right to witness. At my company, years of consistently superb work paid off with a promotion to a director-level position. I now led a team of bright up-and-comers helping set strategy for our division. It felt surreal to be so highly valued when just a few years prior I'd wondered if my career would fully recover post-divorce. On evenings when my schedule allowed, Juliana and I would meet up for dinner and dissect dating app horror stories. We made an unlikely pair, her flashy and fiery, me understated and dry-humored. But our sisterly bond ran deep. "You really showed that cheating scumbag Nolan what's what," Juliana remarked one night as we lingered over tiramisu. Not every woman could turn heartbreak into such epic revenge. I smiled wryly. Don't think I didn't imagine slipping arsenic in his wine a few times. But in the end, living well turned out to be the best revenge. One spring morning I spotted a familiar name in the newspaper and my heartbeat quickened reflexively before I could stop it. There was Nolan, looking worn and shabby as he exited a courthouse trying unsuccessfully to dodge photographers. The accompanying article chronicled his guilty plea to drunk driving charges after ramming his car into a tree. His license suspended, career in tatters. The shell of the man I once loved now seemed utterly broken. For the first time in ages, an unexpected pang of sympathy pierced my heart. Whatever latent feelings stirred were quickly extinguished when Nolan's name surfaced again the following week. Arrested on assault charges after a bar fight, his spiral into reckless self-destruction seemed complete. I shook my head, sadly but resolutely. Some people could not be saved from themselves. I had to remain focused on protecting the family we had built, me and our daughter. She was the only part of him worth cherishing. As I helped my little girl practice newly learned multiplication tables that evening, I marveled at how innocence persists even when surrounded by the fallen world. Her childhood was so different from my own, devoid of yelling, mind games, and violence. By some miracle I had overcome my beginnings and broken the cycle. My daughter would grow up trusting in steadfast love, not tiptoeing around landmines. I realized then that I bore no lingering resentments over the pain and deception in my past. Survival and renewal had given me the courage to fully embrace life's complexities. On the other side awaited joy and light, if you just kept moving forward. Nolan's wasted potential was not my concern. His choices led him down a destructive road long before our paths fatefully intertwined. I saw that now with clarity. My task was to raise my daughter with wisdom and compassion, equipping her for whatever lay ahead. As for me, the possibilities of the future beckoned brightly once more. Scars healed and lessons learned, I stepped forward to greet them.